I stared at my phone in disbelief. The screen glowed with my mother's name and a simple message. Family dinner this Sunday, 6 p.m. Please be there, Donna. It had been 3 months since I'd last seen or spoken to any of them. 3 blissful months of silence. I sighed deeply and tossed my phone onto the couch beside me. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my downtown apartment, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. I'd purchased this place 2 years ago, a significant milestone in my life that my family knew nothing about. As far as they were concerned, I was still renting a small one-bedroom on the outskirts of the city, struggling to make ends meet. That's how they preferred to see me. The black sheep, the underachiever, the disappointment. My younger sister, Melissa, on the other hand, was the golden child. She could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. Every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated with fanfare. Every decision she made was the right one, even when it clearly wasn't. I picked up my phone again and stared at my mother's message. It wasn't a request, it was a summons. And despite the years of therapy I'd invested in to build boundaries, I still felt the familiar tug of obligation. Damn it, I muttered, typing a quick, "I'll be there" before I could change my mind. I was 32 years old, a financial director at one of the city's most prestigious firms, and yet around my family, I reverted to feeling like an insecure teenager. I'd worked my way up from nothing, paid my own way through college, and built a successful career while Melissa had every advantage handed to her on a silver platter. Our parents had paid for her education, her first car, the down payment on her first house. Me? I'd been told I needed to learn the value of hard work. The irony wasn't lost on me. I walked to my kitchen, all sleek countertops and high-end appliances, and poured myself a glass of the expensive red wine I'd been saving. If I was going to survive Sunday dinner, I needed to fortify myself first. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother. "Dress nicely. We have something to celebrate." Of course we did. It was always about celebrating Melissa. Sunday arrived with alarming speed. I spent an hour getting ready, carefully selecting a modest outfit that wouldn't draw attention or invite criticism. I chose a simple black dress that concealed my figure, flat shoes instead of my usual heels, minimal makeup, and pulled my dark hair into a conservative bun. The transformation was startling, from confident financial executive to invisible middle child in under 60 minutes. I drove to my parents' suburban home, the same house I'd grown up in, feeling my anxiety mount. With each mile, their house was exactly as it had always been. Perfectly maintained lawn, trimmed hedges, and a wreath on the door despite it not being any particular holiday. My mother just liked wreaths. Before I could even knock, the door swung open. My mother stood there, looking me up and down with the critical eye that had made me develop an eating disorder in college. "Donna, you're late." She glanced at her watch. It was 6:05 p.m. "Sorry, Mom. Traffic was... Everyone's already here. Come in." She turned and walked inside without waiting for me, leaving me to close the door behind myself. I followed her to the dining room, where my father, Melissa, and her husband Brad were already seated. My father barely looked up from his phone. "Hey, kid," he said, his standard greeting that hadn't evolved since I was 12. Melissa, however, was practically glowing. She wore a designer dress I recognized from the latest collection, probably about $3,000, and her hair was freshly highlighted. Brad sat beside her, looking uncomfortable in a suit that seemed slightly too tight. He gave me an awkward wave. "Hi, everyone," I said, taking the only empty seat, the one furthest from the center of the table. My mother bustled around, bringing in the last of the food. Everything was perfectly arranged, as always. I noticed she'd made all of Melissa's favorites: roast chicken with lemon and herbs, scalloped potatoes, asparagus with hollandaise. Nothing I particularly enjoyed, but that was par for the course. "So," my mother said, once she finally sat down, "we have wonderful news to share." She looked at Melissa expectantly. Melissa reached for Brad's hand and squeezed it. We bought a new place, she announced. It's that gorgeous limestone building in Westwood. You know, the one with the doorman and the rooftop garden? We got a 3-bedroom unit on the 10th floor. The views are absolutely amazing. I knew the building. Units there started at $1.5 million. That's... wow. Congratulations, I said, genuinely surprised. Last I'd heard, Melissa was working as a part-time yoga instructor and Brad had just started a new job in marketing after being laid off from his previous position. We're so proud, my mother beamed. They're really moving up in the world. My father finally put his phone down. It's a smart investment. Property in that area is only going to increase in value. How did you afford it? The question slipped. Out before I could stop myself, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother gave me a sharp look. What your sister and her husband choose to do with their finances isn't your concern, Donna, she said coldly. I bit my tongue and nodded, reaching for my water glass. I should have known better than to ask direct questions. In my family, we didn't discuss certain topics, money being chief among them, unless it was to highlight Melissa's successes or to point out my perceived failures. Actually, Brad said, clearing his throat, we got a really good mortgage rate. My new company has a relationship with First National, and they gave us preferential terms. Plus, Melissa added, Daddy helped us with the down payment. Just a little boost to get us started. She smiled at our father, who nodded approvingly. That's what family is for, he said, to help each other succeed. I took a large sip of water to keep from responding. My father had never offered to help me with anything financial, not college tuition, not a down payment, not even a loan when my car broke down during my senior year, and I had to work double shifts at the campus coffee shop to pay for repairs. When's the housewarming party? My mother asked, serving Melissa an extra large portion of chicken. We're thinking next month, Melissa said. Once we get all the furniture delivered. We're getting everything new. The stuff from our old place just won't work with the aesthetic. I'm sure it will be beautiful, my mother said. You've always had such a good eye for design. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner. Melissa described every detail of the new apartment, the marble countertops, the soaking tub, the walk-in closets, while my parents listened with rapt attention. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate and wondering why I'd bothered to come. Just as dessert was being served, Melissa's favorite tiramisu, my mother turned to me as if suddenly remembering I was there. So, Donna, what's new with you? Still at that same company? The way she said that company made it sound like I worked at a fast food restaurant rather than a respected financial firm. Yes, I said, still there. She took a bite of tiramisu. No prospects for advancement? I hesitated. This was the perfect opening to tell them about my promotion 6 months ago to financial director, overseeing a team of 15 people and managing portfolios worth millions. I could mention the bonus that had allowed me to renovate my kitchen or the industry award I'd received last quarter. But I knew what would happen. They would downplay it, change the subject, find some way to redirect the conversation back to Melissa. Things are fine, I said instead. No complaints. My mother nodded, clearly uninterested. Well, that's good. Stability is nice. And just like that, she turned back to Melissa. Now, tell me more about those imported Italian light fixtures you mentioned. I sat through another hour of this. Melissa's apartment, Melissa's decorating plans, Melissa's brilliant future, before I couldn't take it anymore. I should head out, I said, standing up. Early meeting tomorrow. My mother frowned. But we haven't had coffee yet, and Melissa was going to show us the virtual tour of the apartment. Sorry, I said, not sounding sorry at all. Some of us have to work for a living. The room went silent. Melissa's eyes widened, and my father's head snapped up from his phone. What is that supposed to mean? My mother asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I could have backed down, should have backed down, but something in me snapped. It means that while Melissa is getting handouts for $1 million apartments, I've been working 60-hour weeks, building my career. It means that I've never been offered help, not once, while she gets everything handed to her. It means that I'm tired of coming to these family dinners where the only person anyone cares about is the golden child. Melissa's face crumpled. That's not fair, Donna. You know how hard Brad and I have been working. Hard? I laughed bitterly. You teach 3 yoga classes a week, and Brad just started his job 3 months ago. Neither of you has ever had to really struggle. That's enough, my father said, standing up. You will not speak to your sister that way in our house. Of course, I said, grabbing my purse. Protect Melissa, as always. Heaven forbid anyone point out the blatant favoritism that's been happening my entire life. You're being ridiculous, my mother snapped. We've always treated you both equally. The absurdity of that statement nearly took my breath away. Equally? Are you serious? You paid for her college, her wedding, and now her apartment. Meanwhile, I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school. I lived in a studio apartment with no heat for 2 years to save money. I built my career with 0 help from any of you. We didn't help you because you never asked, my mother said defensively. I asked, I said quietly. Many times. You always had an excuse. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father shifted uncomfortably, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, an acknowledgement that what I was saying was true. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the same dismissive expression I'd seen my entire life. If you're so successful, Melissa said, her voice trembling slightly, then why do you still rent that tiny apartment? Why do you drive a 10-year-old car? Why don't you ever talk about your work? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw for the first time the insecurity behind her perfect facade. She genuinely believed I was struggling, because that's what our parents had always implied, and because I'd never corrected them. I don't rent, I said calmly. I own my apartment, bought it 2 years ago. It's in Riverfront Towers. My mother gasped. Riverfront Towers was the most prestigious address in the city, even more exclusive than Melissa's new building. That's impossible, she sputtered. Those units are $2 million starting price? Yes, I know. I paid cash, Brad choked. On his water. My father's mouth actually fell open. You're lying, Melissa said weakly. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my photos, and held up a picture of my living room with its panoramic view of the city skyline and river beyond. I'm the youngest financial director in my company's history, I said. I manage over $200 million in assets. I make more money than I could possibly spend, but none of you ever bothered to ask because it didn't fit the narrative you created about me. Why didn't you tell us? My father asked, looking genuinely confused. Because you didn't want to know, I replied simply. You decided a long time ago that Melissa was the successful one, and I was the disappointment. It was easier for all of you to keep believing that. My mother's shocked expression was slowly morphing into something calculating. I recognized that look. She was reassessing me as a potential resource. Well, she said, smoothing her napkin, this is certainly surprising news. We're very proud of you, of course. I almost laughed at how transparent she was. Actually, she continued, this might be perfect timing. Melissa and Brad are a little stretched thin with the new mortgage, and we were thinking that since you're doing so well, and there it was, I didn't even let her finish. No, I said flatly. You don't even know what I was going to say, my mother protested. You were going to suggest that I help Melissa and Brad financially, because suddenly, now that you know I have money, I'm expected to share it. But when it was Dad's money, it only went to Melissa. Funny how that works. Melissa's face had turned bright red. We don't need your help, she said stiffly. We're doing just fine. Really? Because it sounds like you're overextended on a mortgage you can barely afford, buying new furniture you don't need for an apartment that's outside your budget. That's none of your business, Brad interjected, finally finding his voice. You're right, I agreed. It's not my business. Just like my finances aren't your business. The difference is, I'm not asking any of you for help. I turned to leave, but my mother grabbed my arm. Don't you walk out of here like this, she hissed. We're your family. I gently removed her hand. You're right. You are my family. But that doesn't mean I have to accept the role you've assigned. Me. I'm done being the black sheep, the cautionary tale, the one you compare Melissa to so she can feel better about herself. That's not what we do, my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. It's exactly what you do, I said. But it's not who I am. I'm successful. I'm respected in my field. I've built a life I'm proud of. No thanks to any of you. I walked to the door, then turned back for one last look at their stunned faces. Don't call me for a while, I said. I think I need a break from all of this. And then I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. The drive home was a blur. My hands shook on the steering wheel, and I had to pull over twice to catch my breath. What had I done? After years of playing the role they'd assigned me, I'd finally broken character. There would be no going back. When I finally reached my building, the doorman greeted me with a warm smile. Good evening, Ms. Mitchell. Everything all right? I realized I probably looked a mess, mascara streaked from the tears I hadn't even noticed. Falling, hair coming loose from its severe bun. Family dinner, I explained with a weak smile. He nodded knowingly. Say no more. Would you like me to have Antonio send up a bottle of wine from the residence cellar? That would be wonderful, Thomas. Thank you. In the elevator, I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving me drained and slightly nauseated. I'd finally stood up for myself, said all the things I'd been holding back for years. It should have felt liberating. Instead, I just felt hollow. My apartment welcomed me with its familiar comfort, the space I'd created for myself, designed to my tastes, paid for with my own money. I kicked off my shoes, unzipped the conservative dress, and left it in a puddle. On the floor. In my closet, I pulled on soft loungewear, removed the pins from my hair, and wiped away the remains of my makeup. A gentle knock at the door announced Antonio with the wine. I thanked him, gave him a generous tip, and poured myself a large glass before sinking onto my balcony lounger. The city lights sparkled below me, reminding me of all I'd accomplished. My phone, which I'd silenced during the drive home, buzzed persistently on the coffee table. I glanced at the screen. 3 missed calls and 5 texts from my mother, 2 calls from my father, and a single text from Melissa. I ignored them all and instead opened my contacts to call the one person who would understand. Hey, said Jason, my best friend since college, picking up on the second ring. How was the dinner from hell? I took a sip of wine. Let's just say I won't be invited back anytime soon. Oh shit, what happened? I recounted the evening's events, from Melissa's real estate news to my final dramatic exit. Damn, Jason said when I finished. I'm kind of proud of you, though. You've been letting them treat you like crap for years. I know, I sighed. But now what? Do I just never speak to them again? Maybe not never, Jason said, but a good long break wouldn't hurt. You've been living your life on their terms for too long, Donna. Maybe it's time to try something different. Like what? Like anything you want. You're not tied to their approval anymore. That's a good thing. I contemplated his words as I gazed out at the skyline. He was right. For as long as I could remember, I'd been making decisions based on my family's expectations. Even my rebellion had been shaped by their perception of me. What would it mean to live solely for myself? You know. What? I said suddenly. I think I need a vacation. Jason laughed. Now you're talking. Where to? I considered this. Europe, I think. I've always wanted to go, but I've been so focused on work, on proving myself. Do it, Jason encouraged. You've got the money, you've got the vacation time saved up. What's stopping you? What indeed? For the first time, I realized that the only thing holding me back had been my own reluctance to fully embrace my success, as if enjoying it would somehow validate my family's neglect. Nothing, I said, feeling a smile spread across my face. Nothing is stopping me. After hanging up with Jason, I opened my laptop and began researching flights. 3 weeks in Europe, London, Paris, Rome, Barcelona. First class all the way. 5-star hotels. No budget, no restrictions. As I clicked purchase on the airline tickets, my phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. We need to talk about what happened tonight. Call me immediately. I picked up the phone, hovered my finger over the call button, and then turned the phone off completely. For once, my family could wait. I had a life to live. I spent the next week in a flurry of preparation, arranging for time off work, shopping for a new wardrobe appropriate for European travel, making restaurant reservations at Michelin-starred establishments I'd always wanted to try. I intentionally kept myself too busy to dwell on the fallout from the family dinner. Not that my family made that easy. The calls and texts continued relentlessly until I finally sent a group message. I'm taking some time for myself. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. Please respect my boundaries. My mother responded immediately. This is absolutely ridiculous. Donna, you can't just drop a bombshell like that and then disappear. We're your family. We deserve an explanation. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked all their numbers. It was a temporary measure, just until I returned from my trip. But the sense of liberation it gave me was immediate and profound. The night before my departure, Jason came over with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. We sat on my balcony, sharing pad thai and spring rolls as the sun set over the city. So, he said, refilling our wine glasses, are you ready for your grand European adventure? I nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. I think so. It still doesn't quite feel real. 3 weeks of freedom, Jason said, raising his glass in a toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass against his. Have you thought about what you'll say to them when you get back? He asked carefully. I sighed. Not really. Part of me wants to just stay away, cut them off completely, but that feels so drastic. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, Jason pointed out. You can establish boundaries without severing ties. What would that even look like? My family doesn't exactly respect boundaries. Then you teach them to, he said simply. You're not the same person you were 2 weeks ago, Donna. You stood up for yourself. That changes things. I considered his words, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear beyond the horizon. He was right. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. For the first time, I was putting myself first, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I guess I'll figure it out when I get back, I said finally. Right now, I just want to focus on enjoying myself. That, Jason said with a grin, I can definitely drink too. The moment I stepped off the plane at Heathrow Airport, I felt different, lighter, somehow, as if I'd left behind more than just my physical location. In London, no one knew me as Melissa's disappointing older sister or the Mitchell family's black sheep. I was just Donna, successful, independent, free to define myself however I chose. I spent my first few days in a happy daze, visiting all the tourist spots I'd read about but never seen. Big Ben, the Tower of London, Buckingham Palace. I took a boat ride on the Thames, had afternoon tea at Claridge's, and spent an entire day getting lost in the British Museum. In my luxury hotel suite, I spread out, taking up space in a way I never allowed myself to at home. I ordered room service, without checking prices, left generous tips, and bought souvenirs without worrying about their cost or practicality. From London, I took the Eurostar to Paris. The City of Light embraced me with its beauty and romance. I climbed the Eiffel Tower at sunset, wandered through the Louvre until my feet ached, and spent hours people-watching at sidewalk cafes. One evening, as I savored a perfectly prepared coq au vin at a tiny restaurant my concierge had recommended, I realized I hadn't thought about my family in days. The constant knot of anxiety that usually lived in my stomach, the one that tightened whenever I imagined my mother's disapproving gaze or my father's indifference, had loosened, maybe even disappeared altogether. In Rome, I threw a coin into the Trevi Fountain and made a wish, not to return to the Eternal City as tradition dictated, but to maintain this newfound sense of peace when I eventually returned home. I toured the Vatican, ate gelato twice a day, and had a dress custom-made by a tailor whose tiny shop I discovered down a cobblestone alley. Barcelona was a riot of color and energy. I danced until dawn at a club recommended by a friendly bartender, slept until noon, and then spent the afternoon admiring Gaudi's fantastical architecture. On my last night there, I sat alone on the beach, watching the Mediterranean waves roll gently onto the shore. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely at peace. Throughout my travels, I posted nothing on social media. This trip was for me alone, not for showing off or seeking external validation. I knew my family would be checking my accounts, looking for clues about my whereabouts. Let them wonder. Let them worry, even. I was done managing their emotions. On my final night in Europe, back in London, before my flight home, I sat in my hotel room and opened my laptop. I had avoided checking my work email during the trip, not wanting anything to intrude on my experience. But now, with return looming, it was time to reconnect with reality. Among the dozens of work messages was an email from a name I didn't immediately recognize. Bradley Mitchell. My brother-in-law, Brad. The subject line read simply, "Please read." Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked it open. "Donna, I hope this finds you well. I got your work email from your company's website. Hope that's okay. I wanted to reach out separately from the rest of the family to say a few things. First, I'm sorry about what happened at dinner. Your parents and Melissa are still pretty upset, but I think you said things that needed to be said a long time ago. The family dynamic has always been weird, but as an outsider who married in, it was never my place to comment. Second, I want you to know that Melissa isn't as oblivious as she might seem. She's always felt the pressure of being the golden child, and it's not always easy for her either. Different kind of burden, but a burden nonetheless. Lastly, about the apartment. You were right. It is too expensive for us right now. We're trying to make it work because your parents pushed us into it, saying we deserved it and that it was the right move at this stage of our lives. But honestly, I'm stressed about the mortgage payments every single day. Anyway, I just wanted to clear the air a bit. I've always respected you, Donna, even when I didn't show it well. Whatever you decide about your relationship with the family going forward, I hope you and I can be on decent terms. Take care, Brad. I read the email twice, unsure how to feel. It was perhaps the most honest communication I'd ever received from any member of my family, even if Brad was only related by marriage. It humanized Melissa in a way I hadn't considered before, that being the favorite carried its own set of expectations and pressures. I didn't reply immediately. This would require thought, a measured response rather than an emotional one. I closed my laptop and walked to the window, gazing out at the London skyline illuminated against the night sky. Tomorrow I would return home, to my apartment, my job, my life. But it wouldn't be the same life I'd left behind 3 weeks ago. I had changed, fundamentally and irrevocably. The question now was how that change would manifest in my relationships going forward. I slept fitfully that night, my dreams a jumbled mess of family dinners, European landmarks, and endless circular arguments that led nowhere. When I woke, the answer I'd been searching for seemed suddenly clear. I didn't have to decide everything now. I could take my time, proceed cautiously, protect my newfound peace while still leaving the door open to potential reconciliation if and only if my family was willing to meet me halfway. I composed a brief reply to Brad before heading to the airport. Brad, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your honesty and perspective. I'm still processing everything and need some time, but I'm open to talking more when I get back. For what it's worth, I hope you and Melissa can find a financial solution that brings you peace rather than stress. Donna, short, polite, non-committal. It was all I could offer for now. As my plane took off from Heathrow, carrying me back across the Atlantic, I felt ready to face whatever awaited me at home. The black sheep had found her own path, and it was a path worth following, regardless of what anyone else thought. My apartment welcomed me back like an old friend. After 3 weeks away, I saw it with fresh eyes, the clean lines, the carefully chosen art, the views that still took my breath away. This space was a physical manifestation of my success, my independence, my true self. I unpacked slowly, savoring the memories attached to each souvenir I'd brought back. A small watercolor from a street artist in Paris, a hand-blown glass paperweight from a tiny shop in Venice, a beautifully woven scarf from Barcelona. I arranged them around my apartment, little touchstones of the freedom I'd experienced. That night, jet-lagged but too wired to sleep, I finally turned my phone back on. I had temporarily unblocked my family before leaving London, curious, but not eager to see what awaited me. The deluge was immediate, dozens of missed calls, twice as many texts, several voicemails. I scrolled through them quickly, noting the evolution from anger. How dare you walk out like that? To confusion. What's gotten into you? To concern. Where are you? Nobody's heard from you at work. To something approaching contrition. Please call us. We just want to know you're safe. I wasn't ready to respond to any of them yet. Instead, I called Jason. The prodigal traveler returns, he answered cheerfully. How was it? Did you eat all the pasta in Italy? Drink all the wine in France? I made a valiant attempt. I laughed. It was amazing, Jason, truly. I feel like a different person. You sound different, he said. More, centered, confident? That's exactly it, I agreed. Like I finally know who I am outside of their expectations. So what's the plan with the family? They've been calling me, by the way. Your mother even showed up at my apartment last week, demanding to know where you were. I groaned. I'm sorry, that's so inappropriate. Don't worry about it. I told her I didn't know, which was true at the time. You were bouncing all over Europe like Carmen Sandiego. Did she believe you? Eventually. She did try to guilt trip me about being a bad friend by not keeping tabs on you. Classic Diana Mitchell manipulation technique. I shook my head, a familiar frustration rising. Some things never change. So? Jason prompted. What are you going to do? I sighed, looking out at the city lights. I think I'm going to take it slow. Send a group text letting them know I'm back and safe, but that I still need space. Set up some firm boundaries before I even consider seeing them in person again. Sounds healthy, Jason approved, and completely unlike anything you've done before with them. Exactly, I smiled. New Donna, new approach. After we hung up, I crafted a careful text to my parents and Melissa. I'm back from a trip abroad. I'm safe and well. I need more time before we speak, but wanted you to know I'm okay. Please respect my request for space. I hit send before I could overthink it, then silenced my phone and went to bed. Whatever their reactions, they could wait until morning. I slept deeply for the first time in weeks, unburdened by dreams or restlessness. When I woke, sun streaming through my bedroom windows, I felt refreshed and calm. My phone showed several notifications, but I ignored them for now. This morning was for me. A leisurely breakfast on my balcony, a long hot shower, a slow re-entry into my life at home. Later, I would read their responses. Later, I would begin the careful work of redefining our relationship on my terms. Later, I would face whatever came next. But for now, in this moment, I was simply Donna Mitchell. No longer. The black sheep, no longer the disappointing daughter, no longer defined by comparison to anyone else. Just Donna. And for the first time in my life, that felt like more than enough. 2 days later, I returned to work. My colleagues welcomed me back warmly, genuinely interested in hearing about my travels. I shared stories and photos, enjoying their reactions to the adventures I'd had. "Europe clearly agrees with you," my boss Margaret said during our catch-up meeting. "You look refreshed, happier." "I feel it," I admitted. "It was exactly what I needed." "Well, good timing taking that break," she said, sliding a folder across her desk toward me, "because I'm about to add to your workload." I opened the folder to find details of a new client, one of the largest potential accounts our firm had ever pursued. "You want me to take this on?" I asked, surprised and flattered. Margaret nodded. "You're the best person for it. The client specifically asked for someone with your expertise after reading that profile on you in Financial Quarterly last month." I blinked, momentarily stunned. I'd done the interview before my trip, but hadn't seen the published piece yet. "They were impressed," Margaret continued. "As they should be. You've built quite a reputation in the industry, Donna." Pride surged through me. Clean, uncomplicated pride in my professional accomplishments. No one could take this away from me or diminish it. This was mine. "Thank you," I said simply. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," she smiled. "Now go get settled. Back in. We'll discuss strategy for the new client tomorrow." As I walked back to my office, I felt eyes on me, colleagues watching with respect, maybe even a touch of envy. I held my head high, shoulders back, stride confident. The European vacation had changed more than just my perspective. It had altered how I carried myself, how I presented to the world. My assistant, Kevin, had arranged a small welcome back display on my desk, fresh flowers, my favorite coffee, and a stack of mail and messages accumulated during my absence. "The team missed you," he said. "It wasn't the same around here without your leadership." I smiled, touched by the gesture. "Thanks, Kevin. It's good to be back." As I sorted through the mail, a heavy cream envelope caught my attention. My name and office address were handwritten in elegant script. No return address. Inside was a card, expensive stock with a simple watercolor design on the front. I opened it to find a short message. "Donna, I hope your travels were restorative. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'd like the chance to listen." "Dad." I stared at the card for a long moment. My father was a man of few words at the best of times. This direct communication, without my mother as intermediary, was unprecedented. I placed the card in my desk drawer, not yet sure how to respond. The old Donna would have jumped at this small olive branch, eager for any scrap of paternal attention. The new Donna recognized it for what it was, a beginning perhaps, but not enough on its own. Throughout the day, I immersed myself in work, reconnecting with my team, catching up on developments that had occurred during my absence. It felt good to engage my mind this way, to remember the professional competence that had always been my refuge. By evening, I was exhausted but satisfied. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Dinner tonight? I want to hear all the details about hot European romance that you definitely didn't include in your postcard." I laughed out loud. No European romance to report, sadly. And yes to dinner. My place, 7 p.m., I'll cook. "You? Cook?" Europe really did change you. See you at 7. I stopped at the gourmet market near my building, selecting ingredients for a simple pasta dish I'd learned to make in Rome. The act of preparing food, chopping vegetables, reducing a sauce, boiling pasta to perfect al dente, had become a meditative pleasure during my travels, one I wanted to continue at home. Jason arrived promptly at 7, bottle of wine in hand, and curiosity written all over his face. "Okay," he said, settling onto a bar stool at my kitchen island while I finished cooking. "Spill everything, and don't leave out the good parts." I laughed, pouring us each a glass of wine. "There aren't any good parts the way you're thinking. I was too busy finding myself to find someone else." "Finding yourself," he repeated with playful skepticism. "That sounds suspiciously like a journey of self-discovery from an Eat, Pray, Love knockoff." "Mock all you want," I said, stirring the sauce. "But it's true. For the first time, I figured out who I am when I'm not defined by my family's perception." Jason's expression softened. "And who is that?" I considered the question as I drained the pasta. "Someone stronger than I realized. Someone who doesn't need their approval or validation. Someone who's built a pretty amazing life entirely on her own terms." "I'll drink to that," Jason said, raising his glass. "Though for the record, some of us already knew how amazing you are." We ate at the dining table, the city lights twinkling beyond my windows as I shared stories from my trip. The small moments, the unexpected discoveries, the gradual unfolding of confidence and joy. "So," Jason said as we finished the meal, "have you decided what to do about your family?" I sighed, toying with the stem of my wine glass. "My father sent me a card at the office. He wants to talk when I'm ready." "And are you ready?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to maintain this distance indefinitely. It's peaceful. But another part recognizes that complete estrangement might not be necessary." "What would reconciliation even look like?" Jason asked. "After everything they've done or not done?" It was the question I'd been asking myself since reading my father's card. "I think it would have to start with acknowledgement. They would need to recognize the favoritism, the unequal treatment, and then genuine change going forward." "Do you think that's possible?" I considered this. "With my father, maybe. He's stubborn but not unreasonable. My mother..." I trailed off, thinking about her rigid worldview, her inability to admit fault. "I'm less optimistic there." "And Melissa?" "That's complicated," I said slowly. "After that email from Brad, I've been thinking about her position in all this. Being the favorite child comes with its own baggage." Jason nodded thoughtfully. "True. Golden handcuffs are still handcuffs." We moved to the couch, conversation flowing easily from family dynamics to work to plans for the future. It was past midnight when Jason finally left, hugging me tightly at the door. "I'm proud of you, he said. "Standing up for yourself, taking that trip, coming back stronger. That took courage." I smiled, touched by his support. "Thanks for being there through all of it." After he left, I wandered my apartment, touching the souvenirs from my travels, concrete reminders of the transformation I'd undergone. On impulse, I opened my laptop and composed a brief email to my father. "Dad, I got your card. Thank you for reaching out. I'm still processing everything, but I think I'll be ready to talk soon. Just the two of us, initially. Donna." I hit send without overthinking it, then closed my laptop. It was a small step, but a deliberate one. Whatever happened next, it would be on my terms. A week passed, then 2. I threw myself into work, particularly the new client project that demanded my full attention and expertise. In quiet moments, I reflected on my trip, on the person I'd become, on the boundaries I was learning to establish. My father had responded to my email with simple acknowledgement. "Just let me know when and where. I'll be there." Nothing more, nothing less. It was strangely comforting. He wasn't pushing, wasn't making demands, or setting expectations. My mother, predictably, was less patient. The texts continued, oscillating between guilt trips and artificial cheerfulness, as if our last encounter had been a minor disagreement rather than a seismic shift in our relationship. I responded minimally, maintaining firm boundaries without engaging in her attempts to pull me back into old patterns. Melissa remained silent, at least directly. Through Brad's occasional emails, I gathered that she was struggling with conflicted feelings, embarrassment over the revelation of my success, confusion about the family dynamic she'd always taken for granted, concern about their financial situation. I felt no urgency to resolve any of it. For the first time, I was allowing myself to prioritize my own emotional well-being over family harmony. It was liberating. On a crisp Saturday morning in early autumn, I met my father at a small cafe halfway between my apartment and my parents' suburban home. I arrived early, selecting a quiet table in the corner where we could talk privately. He arrived precisely on time, dressed in his usual weekend attire of pressed khakis and a button-down shirt. I watched him scan the cafe, noting how he'd aged since I'd last seen him, more gray at his temples, deeper lines around his eyes. When he spotted me, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, perhaps, or regret. He approached slowly, as if giving me time to change my mind. "Donna," he said simply, standing beside the table. "Dad," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. "Thanks for coming." He sat down, placing his phone face down on the table, a small gesture that surprised me. My father was typically glued to his device, half present in most conversations. "You look well," he said after ordering coffee from the server. "The trip was good for you." I nodded. It was. An awkward silence fell between us. In the past, I would have rushed to fill it, to make things comfortable, to take responsibility for the conversation's success. Now, I simply waited. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology." The words hung in the air between us. Never in my life had I heard my father apologize, not to me, not to my mother, not to anyone. "I've been thinking a lot since that dinner," he continued, when I didn't immediately respond. "About how we've treated you, how I've treated you." He paused as the server delivered his coffee, taking a moment to stir in sugar and milk. "The truth is," he said, eyes fixed on his cup, "I didn't know how to relate to you, even when you were little. You were so self-sufficient, so independent. Melissa needed me in obvious ways. You never seemed to." I felt a flicker of anger. "That's not true," I said quietly but firmly. "I needed you. I just learned early on not to show it." He flinched slightly, then nodded. "You're right. And that's on me. On us." We established a dynamic where Melissa's needs were always front and center, and yours were some secondary. By the time I realized what was happening, the pattern was set. "You could have changed it," I pointed out. "Any time in the last 30 years? "Yes," he agreed, meeting my eyes directly for perhaps the first time in our entire conversation. "I could have. I should have. I failed you as a father, Donna, and I'm deeply sorry for that." The simple acknowledgement, delivered without excuses or justifications, caught me off guard. I'd expected defensiveness, minimization, perhaps even counter-accusations. This straightforward admission left me momentarily speechless. "I'm not asking for immediate forgiveness," he continued. "I know it's not that simple, but I want you to know that I see it now. The favoritism, the unequal treatment, all of it. And I want to do better if you'll give me the chance." I studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity or manipulation. I found none. Just an aging man confronting his failures, perhaps for the first time. "What about Mom?" I asked. "And Melissa?" He sighed heavily. "Your mother. She's struggling with all this. She has a very specific view of how family should work, and you've challenged that. She's not as ready as I am to acknowledge where we went wrong." "And Melissa?" "Confused," he said, hurt in her way. She didn't realize how her position in the family affected you. She's always seen you as the strong one, the independent one. Finding out that you've been successful while letting us believe otherwise, it's shaken her perception of everything." I nodded slowly, processing this. "I'm not responsible for her feelings about this," I said finally. Or Mom's. I spent too many years managing everyone else's emotions at the expense of my own. You're right, my father agreed quietly. That's not your burden to carry. We sat, in silence for a moment, the ambient noise of the cafe washing over us. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence this time, but a thoughtful one. I don't know what happens next, I admitted. I know I'm not ready for family dinners or holidays or pretending everything is normal. I wouldn't expect you to be, he said. Maybe we could start small. Coffee like this, occasionally. Just the two of us. I considered his offer. It was reasonable, a careful first step rather than a full reconciliation. I think I could do that, I said finally. But I need you to understand something, Dad. My boundaries aren't negotiable anymore. If this is going to work, whatever this becomes, I need respect and equal treatment, not just from you, but from everyone. That's more than fair, he nodded. I'll do my best, and I'll talk to your mother. I can't promise she'll change overnight, but I can promise that I won't enable her behavior toward you anymore. It wasn't everything, but it was a beginning, a foundation to build upon, if we chose to. We finished our coffee, the conversation, shifting to safer topics. My work, his golf game, neutral ground where we could interact without the weight of decades of dysfunction pressing down on us. As we prepared to leave, he hesitated, then asked, "Would it be all right if I saw where you live sometime? Your apartment? I'd like to see the life you've built for yourself." The question surprised me. It was a genuine expression of interest in my world, something I'd rarely experienced from either of my parents. "Maybe," I said, not quite ready to commit. "Let's see how things go." He accepted this with a nod. "Fair enough. Thank you for meeting me today, Donna. It means more than I can say." We parted with an awkward, brief hug. Physical affection had never been our family's strong suit. As I watched him walk to his car, I felt a curious mixture of emotions: caution, hope, lingering hurt, and something that might have been the beginning of forgiveness. Not yet, but someday. Perhaps. In the months that followed, my life settled into a new rhythm. Work remained fulfilling and demanding. My social circle expanded beyond just Jason to include colleagues and new friends, and I began dating casually. Nothing serious, but enjoyable connections that added dimension to my days. My relationship with my father continued to evolve through our bi-weekly coffee meetings. They were sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but increasingly genuine. He was trying, in his reserved way, to know me as I actually was, rather than as he'd perceived me to be. My mother remained a more complicated situation. After several false starts and failed attempts at reconciliation, her idea of starting fresh involved simply pretending the past had never happened. We settled into a distant but civil relationship conducted primarily through brief phone calls and the occasional text message. It wasn't warm or particularly fulfilling, but it was manageable. Melissa was the surprise. After nearly 2 months of silence following our confrontation, she reached out with an email that revealed more vulnerability than I'd ever seen from her. "Donna, I've written and deleted this email a dozen times, trying to find the right words. I'm not sure they exist, but I'll try anyway. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not seeing how our parents treated you differently. I'm sorry for accepting the advantages I was given without questioning why you weren't offered the same. I'm sorry for perpetuating a family dynamic that hurt you. The truth is, I've always admired you. Your independence, your determination, your ability to make your own way without help. I never realized those qualities developed because you had no other choice. Brad and I are working with a financial planner to get our situation under control. We've cut back, created a budget, and are focusing on living within our means rather than trying to meet Mom and Dad's expectations. It's been eye-opening and, honestly, liberating in many ways. I don't expect an immediate response or forgiveness or anything really. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to understand and that I miss my big sister. Love, Melissa. I read the email several times, surprised by its sincerity and the effort it represented. It would have been easier for Melissa to maintain her anger or confusion, to cast me as the villain who had disrupted their happy family narrative. Instead, she'd done the harder work of self-reflection. After careful consideration, I responded, Melissa, thank you for your email. It couldn't have been easy to write, and I appreciate the honesty and self-awareness it shows. I've been doing a lot of thinking, too, about our family and the roles we've all played. For what it's worth, I've never blamed you for the way our parents treated us differently. You didn't create that dynamic. You just existed within it, as I did. I'm glad to hear that you and Brad are taking control of your finances. True independence, financial and otherwise, is empowering in ways I think you're beginning to discover. It might take time to rebuild our relationship, but I'm open to trying. Maybe we could meet for lunch sometime, just the two of us? Donna. We met the following week at a quiet restaurant downtown. The conversation was halting at first, both of us careful not to say the wrong thing. But as the meal progressed, something shifted. We found ourselves sharing stories from childhood, the same experiences viewed through very different lenses, and discovering common ground we'd never known existed. I always thought you had it all figured out, Melissa admitted over dessert. That nothing bothered you, that you didn't need anyone. It never occurred to me that you were hurting. I got good at hiding it, I said. Too good, probably. And I always thought you had everything handed to you on a silver platter, that your life was effortless. I never considered the pressure that came with being the favorite. She nodded, twisting her napkin nervously. The expectations were intense. Still are, really. Nothing is ever quite good enough for Mom. Dad's a little better, but he goes along with whatever she decides, I finished. Usually, she agreed. Though he's been different lately, more, present, independent. Whatever you said to him really made an impact. We parted with a tentative hug and plans to meet again in a few weeks. It wasn't an immediate restoration of sisterly closeness. Too much history lay between us for that, but it was a beginning, a foundation to build upon. As winter turned to spring, I continued my European self-care habits, longer lunches, weekend brunches with friends, evenings spent reading or listening to music rather than working late. I took regular weekend trips to nearby cities, exploring museums and restaurants, enjoying my freedom and financial security. My father and I progressed to dinner meetings, sometimes joined by Melissa and Brad. My mother occasionally participated, though these engagements were inevitably more strained. She was trying in her limited way, but decades of ingrained behaviors didn't change easily. 1 year after my dramatic exit from that fateful family dinner, I hosted a small gathering at my apartment. Jason was there, of course, along with a few close friends from work. My father came alone. My mother had declined, citing a charity committee meeting she couldn't miss. Melissa and Brad arrived bearing an expensive bottle of wine and genuine smiles. As I watched them move around my space, admiring the view, commenting on the art I'd collected, I felt a sense of completion. Not because everything was perfect, far from it. Our family would always carry the scars of our dysfunctional past, but because I had finally claimed my place in the world on my own terms. Later, as the evening wound down, my father joined me on the balcony. We stood side by side, looking out at the city lights. "You've built a beautiful life," he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "I have. I'm sorry I missed so much of it." I glanced at him, noting the genuine regret in his expression. "You're here now," I said simply. He nodded, accepting the boundary implicit in my response. The past couldn't be changed or erased, but the future remained unwritten. Inside, I could hear Melissa laughing at something Jason had said. The sound was carefree, unburdened by competition or comparison. We were all learning, slowly but surely, How to be a family defined by mutual respect rather than rigid roles and expectations. I took a deep breath of the cool night air, feeling centered and calm. The black sheep had found her way home, not to the family that had failed her, but to herself, to the life she'd created through her own strength and determination. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.